Hey guys, okay, so we're talking right now about what is Bitcoin, making Bitcoin easy, what is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin now as a network. We've already gone over Bitcoin as a currency, Bitcoin as a mint, Bitcoin as a central bank, and Bitcoin as a wallet and bank account, and now Bitcoin as a network. After this one is going to be the last one, Bitcoin as a blockchain or record of all the transactions. Like Visa and MasterCard, Bitcoin has its own network. And a network can be any group of people or things that are connected. And these networks come in different shapes and sizes, and they also serve different purposes. In some networks, some participants are more valuable and more important than the other participants because they do more work or they have more important stuff of more important value on them. So think of your bank. That's a good example. When you log into your bank, your computer is one client or one participant, and the bank server is another participant or client. And the bank server takes your password and username information, and it authenticates it and verifies that you're the person logging in and lets you access that account and sees that information. Other bank accounts could be logging in at the same time without any problem whatsoever. And this kind of network is called a centralized network because that bank's server is the central client or participant, and all the others come to that one. That's the central focus. So that's called a centralized network. In many ways, the internet has a lot of centralized networks. There's not as many of the other kinds, but we're not going to get too deep into that today. Netflix is a good example. If you want to watch a show on Netflix, you access Netflix's servers and access it with your computer, and you do so with others. The centralized networks that we have do have benefits. They're great for running a business by centralizing all that data, all that important information. For example, in Netflix's case, it restricts access to everybody else to all their fun movies and shows. It's only to make them only available for the paying customers. So that's one benefit of a centralized network. But for Netflix, you can't download and rewatch that movie all the time and take it somewhere else. You have to watch it, stream it from Netflix's servers from that location. And there are downsides to this. So in a centralized network, there's greater pressure to protect the servers that have, in Netflix's case, all those cool movies and shows, and that costs money. Okay, so you have to secure it from hackers, from outages, a lot of other things, because that's like one kind of central treasure chest. It's all coming, all of the important information is coming from that central place. And not just all that information or those movies and that content, but also usernames and passwords. So that's one of the downsides of a centralized network, is it's one place that stores all that information. And if you think about all these data breaches over the last, 10, 20 years, those are from centralized networks. Those are from centralized places where there's one server and has all this data on it. So there's that too. Bitcoin's network is different. Okay, with Bitcoin, there isn't one central server. There are many central points, okay? And this kind of network is considered decentralized. The concentration of power and data is spread out among a bunch of willing participants instead of all in one place. Now, none of these participants is superior or more valuable to the other because they're all doing the same work with the same stuff. This is considered a peer-to-peer network. It's a kind of decentralized network. And you might remember Napster, they made this kind of network famous in 1999. And again, BitTorrent came after that, if you're familiar with that, or if you're really familiar with that. What happened at that time is people realized that they could upload their CDs, their DVDs, their video games onto a computer and then share it with friends next door, around the world, wherever, from the comfort of their couch, for free, without going to the store or to the mall to buy the same product or to meet their friend and share it. And we know how that turned out. It didn't end well for the record industry or the music industry. They basically were forced to adapt or die. And they didn't start with that ultimatum. At first, they fought it, and it was kind of weird. They would go after If you remember, grandmas whose sons or grandsons were downloading and tried to throw them in jail. It got really bad there for a while. I remember, I think it was Comcast who would do like a 6-strike warning. So if they caught you downloading or streaming anything, there would be like a 6-strike and then 6 strikes, and then they would kick off your access. So I know they got the government involved and the law enforcement. It was messy. They were losing money to them. It was their money. But what ultimately was happening was there was a new technology that consumers preferred over the old way. And at that point, there was only a legal means to use that illegal, I put in quotations because laws changed, only a legal means to get that data using that new technology. So how does that relate or transfer to Bitcoin? Well, that's what's happening today with Bitcoin and banking and currency and even the central bank. The record and music industries were eventually forced to adapt or die when they realized they couldn't compete. They couldn't compete with that because too many consumers wanted that, and they changed. So that's why Blockbuster died. That's why we have Netflix. That's why we have Spotify and Apple Music. That's what came from it. And what the outcome of that was content that was faster, cheaper, and more frequent than what they had before, which, everybody wants better, faster, cheaper. And so, as I said, how this relates to Bitcoin is the same things happening with finance and money and currency. Technology is currently meeting a need in the world for these type of industries, whether it's commerce or business or logistics. What makes Bitcoin's decentralized peer-to-peer network so special is that Satoshi never forced anyone to participate in it, okay? Participants can come or go as they please, and that happens. In our centralized network example with Netflix, employees don't have that luxury. If they want to get paid for work, they have to show up. But if Bitcoin's network participants, which are mostly considered miners, the ones who do the most kind of work and support the network, if they decide to help, this is how they do it and how they eventually get paid in its decentralized network. So this is where things are going to start to come together. Bitcoin's network users send Bitcoin from their wallets back and forth to other addresses as a message. So kind of like an email. You can actually put some information in these messages, these payments back and forth. So it's across the network. And we talked about in the last video with the wallet and the bank account what these addresses were. Remember, they come from first the private key next to the public key, and the public key creates these addresses. So first thing, when it comes to this network, the first step is the users on this network, you and me, they send Bitcoin back and forth to other wallet addresses as a message. And miners do two things simultaneously. The first thing is they begin to race against each other to solve a puzzle. Okay, this is kind of a hard problem that they solve that only processing power can solve. And the second thing is they start to confirm that all of these network transactions that they see going back and forth, all these messages are legitimate, that they don't include Bitcoin that people have already spent and they're trying to double spend and kind of game the system, like counterfeit, like using a counterfeit money. They also confirm that the true owner of those Bitcoin are actually sending and spending those Bitcoins. And then finally, within 10 minutes, one miner emerges victorious, solving that puzzle. And now the system does two things. First, they reward the miner, the winning miner who solved the puzzle, with the mining reward. And currently, that reward every 10 minutes is 6.25 newly minted Bitcoin. And that's as of, I think that was in March. Plus, they get all the network transaction fees, which is roughly around 1 Bitcoin on average. So not a bad deal, 7.25 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. So you can see how that is big business. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then what they do is they add all the transactions in that 10-minute window into a new link or block in the chain, hence we get the word blockchain, and they link together with every link before it, and then the process starts over again. The Bitcoin network users send Bitcoin back and forth via the network transactions as messages, etc. Miners race to solve that puzzle, and they verify all those transactions are legitimate. One person wins, new Bitcoin is minted, etc. Now, the mining reward has decreased over time. We've talked about that a little bit. Every 4 years, it gets cut in half by a process or by an event called the halving or the halvening. And in each case, not too long after there's been this halving period, the price hits a new high. And it shouldn't surprise us because the supply, the faucet that's shooting out all the water, if it was an analogy of water, gets smaller and smaller, and so less comes out. So the little that we have that we're left with is even more valuable because there's less of them coming out. Miners have consistently gotten less Bitcoin over the last 10 years after each of these halvings. But Bitcoin's price has increased over time. So the work they do, even if it's not for a mega corporation and a guaranteed salary with benefits, still remains profitable and worth it because of how unique and valuable Bitcoin is and the chance to make so much money off of it. In this way, you could say Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, and even some of these other cryptocurrencies has created thousands of new jobs, which is incredible, just as an automated system that Satoshi put all of these factors together. And this mining reward will continue for many, many more years, actually probably long after we're all dead, in the year 2140, so another 119 years from now. That's when the 21 millionth, or almost exactly to that point, will be mined. And at that point, miners, if whatever's happened on Earth, and whoever's still around, these miners will get paid strictly in transaction fees. So that's also part of the way that they get paid. And here's a breakdown of the transaction fees that miners have earned over time per month since Bitcoin was introduced. These are some of the reasons Satoshi made the network decentralized and peer-to-peer, so that anyone can download the software and participate and run it, and you're free to come and go as you please. Because the faster processing power you have, the greater probability of winning that mining reward and the fees. So that's what we talked about before, and one of the reasons I didn't mine in 2013 is because more miners had started to mine, which made the difficulty, so this puzzle difficulty, which is again genius, gets harder the more people who try to solve it. And so if less people get offline and don't want to participate, the puzzle gets easier. So it automatically adjusts to have the right number of Bitcoin released every 10 minutes. I mean, that is unbelievable. And mining has become this hardware arms race, which Satoshi even used the word arms race in some of his emails, with the fastest processor, or more specifically, the fastest ASIC, application-specific integrated circuit, wins out. You used to be able to mine with your PC, your CPU, and then I mentioned your graphics card, and then eventually ASICs. But people combined these ASICs into larger and larger companies and became like server farms. So these are rooms, warehouses with thousands and thousands of these computers that are dedicated to just mine Bitcoin, and they're all over the world.